Hey friends, I have a quiet 10 minutes or so before the kids get home from school, and I wanted to pop on and record a video around the recipe that I've been using for give or take around 5 years. Almost every morning, it's my superfood coffee brew. Now this is gonna be a recipe that we include in the Whole Fit collaboration program, the Healthy Habits program that we're launching in June for our oil community. You can find info on that if you go to my website, wholefit.com. You'll see a banner at the top of the website that says, join us for Healthy Habits. But that's not what this is about. I wanna show you guys how you make this brew. It's really easy to do. I've got all of my tools out here. And I do wanna let you know, this is a bit of an intense recipe because often when we think of making coffee, it's like, oh, we just go grind the beans and pour the hot water in and we're good to go. Or maybe we just go through the drive-through. Not what you're gonna learn here today. I see coffee as a ceremony. It's been part of my life. Most of my adult life, I have been involved with coffee, okay? Even when I was young, there was always a coffee pot going, okay? I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but it was very much a part of our family rituals. It was like if we had to have a good heart-to-heart or a serious talk, it's like, let's go start the coffee first, right? So, and then most of my adult life, I worked with coffee companies before I do the work that I do now. So I wanna share with you real quick what goes into this recipe, and I'm gonna show you how to make it. I've just boiled my hot water, so it's ready to go, and I've got all my tools here for you. But first, what I wanna start off talking about is the actual base for the coffee. So this particular recipe that I'm gonna show you uses half coffee beans and half cacao nibs, okay? Now, let's talk about the coffee first. Number one, you always want to select organic coffee beans because that industry is heavily laden with pesticides, typically when it's grown. Okay, so I love that. Lauren, she said, where there is community, there is coffee. I very much agree with that. So coffee beans, always do your best to find organic. You do want to talk to your local farmers, local people who are bringing in coffee beans, because sometimes you'll learn that coffee has been fairly traded and is actually organically grown. It's just that the coffee farmer could not pay for the organic certification, okay? So I'm not saying that it always has to have the organic label, but I do want to provide you with a brand that you will typically find in a lot of grocers. So right now we're talking about a caffeinated bean, okay? So this brand is Kicking Horse Coffee. It might even be, yeah, it's roasted in Canada. So I'm not sure if you have this in the US. You would probably have access to a lot more organic brands in the US than we do in Canada anyway. But this Kicking Horse brand I really love. It's organic, it's fairly traded. So this is part of the bean mix that I use. And then what I like to do is half calf, half decaf when we're talking about the coffee beans. Now with decaf, you do want to make sure that it is also organic, but that it is Swiss water processed, because there's a process that all coffee beans go through to decaffeinate them, and typically it's using a lot of chemicals in that process. So Swiss water process is going to be the better way to go, and this is a brand I want to recommend. It's called Ethical Bean Coffee, okay? This particular one is a dark roast decaf, whole bean, fairly traded, organic seal, and Swiss water process. So what I do is 5 tablespoons total coffee bean, half decaf, half caffeinated, okay? So that's half the mix. Are you still with me? The other half is straight up cacao nibs, okay? Now, you may see cocoa versus cacao. Cacao is the straight up, the way it's meant to be from the earth. It's the way that the bean grows, okay? So when you see a cacao bean, it looks very similar actually to a coffee bean. And when we talk about cacao nibs, as you can see here, that's basically just the cocoa bean that's been spliced, okay? So I have a little jar of cacao nibs. Now what I love to do is I throw them right into my burr grinder with the beans. Now you might have to be careful, some grinders burn really hot, so you might find that it actually melts the nibs and you have to clean it more often. I haven't had that issue. I also, you guys, I have all the coffee things in my house. I have a hand grinder that looks like this, and often at night, I will grind some decaf beans if I'm wanting something at night this way, okay? So that can be an option for you, that you get a little hand grinder or just a small pulse grinder for grinding your cacao nibs. But the base for my Bodum, my French press, which is my preferred way to brew coffee, yes. I do have a drip brewer, and I have behind me, you might see it there in the corner, I have a pour over. But if I'm going to do it right, I'm going to use a Bodum French press, same thing. So again, just to recap, what's going into this base that I've ground. Yes, Tracy, you can use Creo Brew, brewed cacao instead of coffee, absolutely. And the reason, you guys, I love using the cacao in here is because it helps cut back on the caffeine. It also is introducing a high amount of phytonutrients, antioxidants, like theobromine, and iron and magnesium. I mean, it's really smart. And obviously we love the flavor, right? You're gonna find that when you brew this, it has a real, just kind of okay, I'll tell you what it is. It tastes the way coffee smells. Enough said, right? Because that's what we all wish coffee actually tasted like. Well, this one actually does. Okay, so the total that I use in my standard size Bodum / French press, which is about an 8-cup French press. There are 12-cup versions, and there are also 4-cup versions, but 8-cup is probably the most popular size you'll find. In here, you're gonna use between 10 to 12 tablespoons of your base, okay? So I like to use 10 tablespoons. That's the recipe I work with. So what I've ground here is a mix of decaf, of regular caffeinated beans, and the cacao nibs. The cacao nibs make up 50% of this, okay? So I'm gonna portion out 10 tablespoons, and I'm gonna show you how to make coffee in a French press, just like I did back in my barista days. While I'm counting out 10 tablespoons, did you know that my husband, my man of 20 years, we met when I was a barista at Starbucks? Yes, we did. Okay, so you can see it covers probably about an inch there. So I'm gonna grab the hot water. Okay, so I have my little kettle with the cute little spout. Now, here's what you wanna do with your French press. You want to just cover the grinds with about an inch of water just off the boil. And then you're going to take, ideally, a wood something. It could be a wood spatula, a wood spoon, whatever. And you're gonna give it a little stir here to help all of your ground coffee and ground cacao mix evenly with the water. You're gonna let it sit and marinate a little bit for about 20 seconds, okay? Gently stirring. The reason you wanna use a wood tool is because if you use metal in a glass press, you'll probably crack it. I've done that many times. Okay, so we live and learn. Okay, I'm gonna let that sit for about 10 more seconds. And then once that's done, I'm going to top it up slowly with the hot water. You guys are gonna see the really nice crema start to rise. And then typically, if you're just brewing straight up coffee, the actual formula for a Bodum is 4 minutes. You let it sit with the water. I have found when you introduce the cacao, you need to add at least another minute. So I'm gonna start my timer for 5 minutes right here. And I'm just going to rest the top of the press on top. So you don't plunge it, right? Because you want it all to marinate and come together. So while that's brewing, I just want to show you a few other substitutes you can consider. If you're not a coffee drinker, you can obviously experiment with some teas. I'm not a tea girl. I try to be a tea girl. I do have a lot of teas in my cupboard, much to Chris's dismay. But you know, rooibos tea is a good one to look into because it's also high in antioxidants, no caffeine. Herbal teas, they do okay, because I'm going to show you how to blend in the oils, the fats, especially for you women. You will love this. We love our fats, women, right? This isn't the 90s anymore. We know how important fats are in our diet. So teas, yes, you know, you can go rooibos, you can go herbal, green, black, oolong, they all have caffeine, okay? So if you're trying to avoid caffeine, you're stuck with the herbals and the rooibos teas. But let's talk about things that actually taste like coffee, some that don't have caffeine in them. So the first thing I want to talk about, while this is still going, I've got 3.5 minutes left here. Dandy Blend is brilliant. You know what this is, you guys? Does anybody know what Dandy Blend is? Drop it in the comments. It is herbal, okay? So no caffeine in it, and it tastes like coffee, okay? It actually gives you a little bit when you brew it. It gives you a little bit. I'm waiting to see if somebody knows what this is. The hint is in the picture and in the first 4 letters. Not chicory. I'm gonna get to that in a moment. Yes, it's dandelion. Can you believe that? Maggie knows. Dandelion it's basically a fine powder of dandelion, you guys. I know that sounds rank, but it tastes amazing, okay? And I'll just show you. I don't know if you can actually see into the bag very well. Actually, I've got a little scoop in here, so I'll try to get close up. You can see, it looks like ground coffee, right? It also comes in little travel packs, which I wanted to pull out here for you. Now somebody mentioned chicory. This is another company you can look into. It's called Tea Chino. It's a chicory-based herbal coffee alternative. It's caffeine-free, mostly organic, and it does taste pretty good as well. It often comes in a lot of flavors like hazelnut and vanilla. So if you like flavors in your coffee, that can work too. And then we have Four Sigmatic, right? So they do the mushroom coffees. So I actually really like it. They do a mix of mushroom and decaf. I think they do caffeinated as well, but I have this decaf version for at night that I like to play around with. And then Tracy mentioned Creo Brew. I have a lot of these up on my, I think it's in the Healthy Insides shop on my website, okay? So those you can all use for a base. Now we have 2 more minutes left before we plunge this baby. And I want to mention the fats. Now, I have been doing this approach, like I said, for about 5 years, where it's a form of intermittent fasting, but only in the sense that you're not giving your coffee carbohydrates or sugar or protein until noon. So typically if you have your last meal, let's say at 8 o'clock the night before, then you're doing a sugar fast for about 16 hours around the clock, okay? So the reason that I love this is because with this particular recipe, it puts your body into a state of using fat as fuel, okay? And it helps to also dip into some of your glycogen stores. So if you are a woman, I want you to try this because this can be really helpful for helping to balance your hormones and your appetite and your hunger, especially if you are a mom and your energy is going out in a lot of places, therefore. Also, if you're a business owner, if you're somebody who has to make a lot of decisions every day, your brain uses up a lot of your body's energy. I don't know if you realize that. Sometimes we think that the burn off that our body does, the expenditure is spent during physical movement. So you often think, oh, if I've had a tough workout, I have to rebuild. Did you know that your brain consumes more of your energy than anything else? So if you're an entrepreneur and you're making a lot of decisions every day in your business, or you're working on something creative right now and you're like firing, right? You've got to have that brain turned on. You're going to absolutely love this approach, especially in the morning. So what I do is I get up 5:30, somewhere in there. I have this around 7 a.m. This is all I have until around noon. I typically will go work out around 11, sometimes a little earlier. And then at noon is when I break off of this. There's our timer going. I break off of this and I introduce protein and carbs, okay? Yes, digestion is also one of the most costly systems in our body. So if we're, thank you for that, Holly. If we're waking up in the morning and sometimes we're not even hungry and we're forcing our body to eat because we've been told all our life, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Your body is right away dedicating a lot of its energy to digesting that food. Now, I'm not saying having a great breakfast is a bad thing. That's a great thing. It's just that if you are putting a lot of other demands on your body at the same time, then I want you to try this. And you might find that this really works for you. I'll answer your questions right after I'm done here. So it's time to press our coffee, okay? So it has sat together, it's marinated, it's coming together nicely. You could actually let this one sit for a couple more minutes if you wanted to, because the cacao can take a little bit longer to marinate with the water, but I'm gonna go ahead and plunge. So all you're doing now is you're filtering out the grinds from the brew. Now this is an 8-cup press, not your typical cup, right? Like if you're going to a coffee shop, the standard coffee size is 16 ounces which is almost 3 standard cups, okay? So you'll find if you're making a press like this, it'll probably fill 2 to 3 of your typical mugs that you've had at home, okay? Yeah, go ahead and ask your questions. That's why I did this live as opposed to just hitting my video record button. So I'll get to your questions at the end. So here's the recipe, okay? Again, if you're joining in late, I've got a brew here of half cacao, ground cacao nibs. And then the other half is coffee beans, but it's half decaf, half regular, organic, okay? That's the brew. Now, the only thing I did not remember to set out was my Vitamix, because what I do then is I take this coffee brew and I pour it into a Vitamix along with, this is what I do, this isn't what you have to do, but you know what you might want to experiment with is half of this, okay, to begin with, see if you like it. But what I do is 2 tablespoons of an organic grass-fed butter. Now the butter itself hasn't been grass-fed, but we know what we mean, right? Mom, come on over, yes. So 2 tablespoons of good butter. Good butter is gonna be yellow. That's a good way to know, right? The brand I have here is Savor. It's something that I'm finding in a lot of Canadian grocers. A really accessible one for most people is Kerrygold. It's a gold and green foil wrapper. You may have seen it in stores. So 2 tablespoons of that. Holly says she's vegan. What could you use? You know, you can use just coconut oil, but the butter is recommended because of the fat-soluble vitamins that you're getting with it. Now you can experiment with ghee, which is clarified butter. You basically boil out any of the dairy, okay? So if that's the issue, you can look into ghee, G-H-E-E. You can buy a lot of ghee. You can actually even buy mixes of ghee with coconut oil now. You'll see a lot of those bottles around. Now, so I do 2 tablespoons of the butter, and then I do 1 tablespoon of Bulletproof brand Brain Octane, okay? So, you know, you can use just coconut oil. It's just that the specific type of MCTs in this are what help the body go into ketosis, okay, which is basically helping it to be more optimal with the way it's using energy and burning. So that is that's like the baseline recipe. 2 tablespoons butter, 1 tablespoon Brain Octane, add it to this 8 cups of brew, put it in the blender. I could just blend that up. It would be so delicious. It's coffee that tastes the way coffee smells. What I do is I pour it into a mug and then I pour the rest into a thermos and just keep repouring from that thermos. And I keep a little hand blender at my desk. I also travel with this. I have this in my travel shop on my website. However, I do also like to jazz it up a little bit. So I will often add 1 teaspoon of maca powder. Sometimes I'll add essential oils. My favorite essential oils, doTERRA brand, obviously, for internal use. Anytime we're talking about oils on this channel anyway, it's doTERRA because they're the purest. But if you're using essential oils internally, you do want to really make sure you're using a company that's giving you all of the testing on those oils so you know what's in those bottles, right? So doTERRA oils that I add to the coffee, I like to do 1 drop, only 1 drop. That's all you need for this. Cinnamon, or I'll use cassia, or peppermint is really good too. And that's actually really nice because you're using the cacao nibs. Or did I say wild orange? Wild orange is really nice too. So you can play around with those and just blend that in. One other tip I'll give you, you can actually, if you're using a drip brewer, or you could even do it in the press, you can add a drop of the essential oil in with the grinds, okay? And then that will flavor the coffee as well. So I think that's all I wanted to mention about the actual recipe. This is a recipe I'm recommending for our 21-day challenge that the group tries every morning for 21 days because it is going to help them regulate their blood sugar. It's going to give them a lot of energy in the mornings to dedicate to, especially for those in our community that work from home. I'm going to encourage them to remap and create a better blueprint for their day. Where they're making their most important decisions in the morning while their brain is fired up, right? Oh, the last thing I set out here I was going to mention, I also have in my travel shop, this is a company I super love called Fat Fuel. So when I travel, this is a packet. You can't buy these in Canada. That's why I wasn't going to mention it, but for those of you in the US, I always get these sent to Florida and I bring them home when I come home. But this has grass-fed butter, MCT oil, coconut oil powder, instant organic coffee, and Himalayan salt mixed into a packet. You just add hot water. So that's my favorite way to travel and get the fats in the brew. I think I'll go to your questions right now, but I'm gonna enjoy this cup after I hop off with you guys. Yeah, Lauren asked, do I add any collagen? So do a test with this. Some people like to add collagen powder because it blends really nicely. It has no flavor. It blends really nicely and it adds around 10 grams of protein. I think it's about 10 grams of protein per tablespoon, okay? So it's a nice way to bump up the protein in your meals. I will actually often add it to the kids' things. I'll sneak it into things when I'm baking or if I'm making oatmeal for them or something that is gonna burn off and turn quickly into sugar in their body. I will try to add collagen in to slow that process down. But here's what I found. When I add collagen to this in the mornings, I get hungrier sooner. So when I do this recipe as is, and it's just the straight up fats, there's no sugar, there's no carbohydrates, and there's no protein, it keeps me stable longer. So for me, adding collagen makes me hungrier. It actually makes me hungry about an hour after having this. So I don't like to do that. Personally, what I like to do is I'll have about 20 grams of protein through the form of a smoothie right after my workout around noon. And then I'll have a big salad around 1 or 2 o'clock, and then a normal dinner, and that's kind of my day. Cacao while breastfeeding. Cacao will have a small amount of caffeine. It's gonna have about 1/4 the amount of a cup of coffee. So a lot of women try to avoid caffeine when they're breastfeeding. You can buy ground versions like Creo Brew we mentioned earlier. I don't believe that has caffeine in it. The other ones I mentioned like Dandy Blend don't have caffeine in it. So what I would do is I would play around with a mix of Dandy Blend and decaf beans, okay? Honestly, breastfeeding moms, really smart to integrate this in the morning. Even if you have half a portion of this first thing in the morning, while the house can get a little bit busy, and that's gonna give you some really good fats. You need a lot of fats when you're breastfeeding and really just as a woman in general. So I think you'll really like how this makes you feel, especially if you feel like, I don't know, before I started doing this, especially as a mom, I felt like I was constantly snacking. I was constantly grabbing like the scraps off my kids' plates. I was just always hungry. And this has stabilized me so nicely that I'm not, grabbing things constantly. And I just appreciate that so much. Yeah, so Diana, this is what I do in the mornings. I break it with a smoothie after my workout around noon, and then I always have about 5 cups of greens with some more protein around 1 or 2 o'clock, like a big salad or a blended soup or something. And then, maybe a light snack in between there before dinner, but then a normal dinner. And so my caloric intake, I guess, if I was measuring it that way, would be between 2,500 to probably around 2,500 a day, 2,000 to 2,500. Let me back up here, see what questions you guys had that I might have missed. Okay, answered the collagen. Turmeric, yes, that's another one. A lot of you are saying you love to add to your coffee. So I like to do a brew at night. If you've done Ready, Set, Glow, my detox program, you know about the nightcap latte, right? Where we do coconut milk and turmeric oil and chaga tea and cacao. Chaga tea is another one I didn't mention here, but you can go on my YouTube channel. A couple years ago, I did a video showing you how to brew chaga tea in a little crock pot, and you can just keep drawing from it. It actually works really well for this too. What I would do is I would do half of that and half of the coffee. So you can play around with different things, but what I like to do is do kind of a bulk mix up where I'll add the portions of cacao nibs and the coffee beans and the decaf beans, and I'll mix it into a little canister, and then I'll just grab from that in the morning when I'm doing a fresh grind. Always try to grind fresh too. It's really good to have your own grinder in your home and grind right before you're gonna do the French press. Answered the vegan question. Mom's coming over right now for coffee. Cacao nibs you can buy really anywhere now. Like even our grocery store sells them now. Consumer demand, right? So as more people have been voting with their dollars and what they want to see more of over the last couple of years, I would say like 5 years ago, I had a much harder time finding them. I used to have to buy them online at health food stores, but now they're everywhere. Can I stomach this with LLV? Yes, you likely can, because again, the fats are going to create a carrier situation. So your body's not just burning up quick, right? Like you would if you had a typical breakfast with carbohydrates like toast or oatmeal. Things that are just carbohydrate based are going to burn into sugar really quick in your body. So you can take your supplements with this. What I personally do is I take my supplements the first round with my smoothie, and then again with dinner. I don't have an issue with like the lifelong vitality that you mentioned. I don't have any issues with that creating any sort of energy surplus at night getting in the way of my sleep. But some people may, so you just want to play around with that. Okay, I think I got to all of your questions, and I hope you found this helpful. I am going to upload this to WholeFit tonight into a blog post, okay? So you'll have this video, but then I'll also give you the actual recipe in written form with links to the various products. So it'll make it a little bit easier for you. Yes, wholefit.com, you got it. That's where you can go to find the products. I think everything I've mentioned here today, almost everything, will be in the Inside Out shop, the Healthy Insides. Oh, Jackie, hey, she said she had my first bulletproof coffee at my house years ago and she's been hooked. I've kind of turned half the world onto bulletproof. I really love it. So, and I only hop on and talk about things I really love. I'm sure you're starting to pick that up from me. Okay, I think we're good. Fun to hang with you guys today. Watch for that recipe tonight. Share it with all the people that you want to have over for coffee. And as my assistant Jill once said, never come over to Ange's and try to make coffee for her, because she's a drama queen when it comes to coffee. But I mean, I don't know. We only live once on this earth. So let's just like do it right. Let's make our coffee good. All of this I attribute to my 10-year stint at Starbucks, where we had to do coffee tastings 3 times a day in the store. We had the presses going all the time, and we would just talk. And when I was a store manager, I used to sit with my baristas and talk about their development over a press of coffee. And I don't know, my life hasn't changed too much, has it? No, we do that here. So anyway, thanks for joining live. See you guys.